They can talk about better is here and better is coming, but like it or not, if I'm not on a daily basis making decisions that will produce better, I can utter better out of my mouth, but reap foolishness because that's what I'm choosing to reap. I'm making decisions without praying. I'm choosing to do things that I know don't line up with the word of God. And then I end up in a painful situation. Again, love God, devoted to God, and claim to be a follower of Christ, but I'm going through painful things because of the decisions that I'm choosing to make. Notice Matthew 16:21. From that time, Jesus began to show to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be killed and be raised the third day. Then Jesus said to his disciples, if anyone desires to come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. Verse 21, from that time, Jesus began to show, to explain, to reveal to his disciples, notice that he must go to Jerusalem, and in Jerusalem, he's going to suffer many things. In verse 24, he says to his disciples that if anyone desires to come after me or to be my disciple, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and notice this, follow me. One thing the cross represents is suffering. And so Jesus understood that he would suffer, but he also wanted his disciples to understand that they likewise would suffer. And so tonight I want to deal with this simple subject, why do Christians suffer? Let's give God a praise for the subject tonight. Why do Christians suffer? Let's first of all deal with Christian. I want you to receive tonight that the first thing a Christian is a follower of Jesus the Christ, someone who follows Jesus. And in following Jesus, I'm saying to us tonight, it is a person who follows the sayings or the teachings of Jesus. Number two, when you deal with a Christian, you're dealing with people who love God and are devoted to him. You're dealing with people who love God and people who are devoted to him. And so a Christian should be a loyal person, should be a dedicated person. Again, someone who loves God and is devoted to him. And I believe if a person sincerely loves God, he or she will not have a problem being devoted to God. One word that's synonymous with devoted is being faithful. We should be faithful to God. Am I right about that? We should be known as people who are faithful unto God. And finally, a Christian is someone who strives to live according to the word of God. So a Christian is not to be expected to be a perfect or flawless person, but one who strives to live, again, according to the word or the will of God. And whenever you are living by or according to the word or the will of God, you are, in fact, living by faith. You are living by what God has ordained for his children to live by. And we can look at that in Hebrews 10 and 38. We can look at that in Galatians 3 and 11. We can look at that in Romans 1 and 17. And we can see that in the book of Habakkuk 2 and 4, that basically says that the just should live by faith. And so if you are a bona fide Christian, you are striving to live according to the word of God. You're striving to live by what is written as well as what is revealed. Now, what do I mean tonight when I talk to you about suffering? I want to give you one definition, and that is to experience something that's extremely painful. Suffering has to do with experiencing something that is extremely painful. Because most of us, when we think about suffering, what the first thing that comes to my mind is painful. Something that is, in one sense, going to hurt some. You see what I'm saying? How many know anytime you're experiencing pain, that says that something's hurting. Something's hurting, right? And so again, don't miss this tonight. When I talk about suffering, I'm saying you're experiencing something that is extremely painful. Now, why do Christians suffer? Let's deal with one thing tonight. One reason why Christians suffer is because they choose to make poor, bad, unwise, or foolish decisions. One reason that Christians can suffer is because they choose to make bad, poor, unwise, or foolish decisions. Now again, consider the definition that I gave you tonight for a Christian, and think about that for a moment. People who love God and are devoted or faithful to him. That means you can love God and be devoted to him, but can be experiencing suffering or going through something painful because of the foolish choices that you choose to make in your life. Not because God doesn't love you, and not because you don't love God, but because your decision making is unwise. And like it or not, we're free moral agents, and if we choose to make a decision that's foolish, like it or not, we're going to reap as a result of what we chose to do. I don't know why some of us quiet, because even though we may deem ourselves wise tonight, we know in time past some of the suffering that many of us went through, we put ourselves through that. We put that on ourselves by making some very foolish choices, and ended up in a painful situation, not because God had ordained for us to go through that, but again, our decision making was just simply unwise. We were choosing to do things that were foolish or contrary to the will or the word of God. And I don't know about you, but it's sad when you see people who love God, yet they are suffering because they're not making the right choices. They're not making choices that's going to produce better. They can talk about better is here and better is coming, but like it or not, if I'm not on a daily basis making decisions that will produce better, I can utter better out of my mouth, but reap foolishness because that's what I'm choosing to reap. I'm making decisions without praying. I'm choosing to do things that I know don't line up with the word of God. And then I end up in a painful situation. Again, love God, devoted to God, and claim to be a follower of Christ, but I'm going through painful things because of the decisions that I'm choosing to make. And somebody there tonight where you're going through something, and it's a result of you making foolish or unwise decisions. And some folk make decisions that are unwise and foolish in part because they're ignorant. You got a lot of folk that love God, but like it or not, they in the church. They're in a church where they're not being taught. They're in a church where the word of God is not coming forth in the manner that it needs to, and therefore they're remaining in a place that God does not want them to be in. And again, Hosea said, God said, my people are destroyed for a lack of what? Knowledge. He said, because you what? You reject knowledge. But understand, there are folk in the wrong church, and they are not getting the knowledge that they need in order to make the decisions that they need to make in life. They attend church faithfully, but are not being taught. But now we quiet, but some of us got loved ones that are in churches where they are not being taught. And they're going through painful things because, again, no one is teaching them the right way. And sometimes folk will stay in the wrong church for a number of reasons. We'll stay there because that's where family at. We'll stay there because that's the closest church to them. We'll stay there because the pastor is not preaching on their sin, or he's not dealing with things that may offend them. And so they stay there because they're comfortable. But yeah, they're comfortable, yet they're suffering because they're not being taught better, or they're not being taught the word of God. Not being taught how to come up out of something that's simple, but the preacher won't preach about it. Struggling financially, and the preacher won't preach about giving, won't preach about the tithe. Come on, somebody. Struggling and can't get answers and are doing dumb stuff, but the preacher won't preach about the necessity of prayer, how to war in prayer, how to get an answer in prayer. Just ignorant folk. Am I right? But then you have people that, yes, they're in the right church. They are being taught the word of God, but are choosing not to take heed.